Ah, this does put a smile on my face. Alright, Avengers Infinity War is just around the corner, and this is a prep video. This is partly an exercise for me, partly to help folks out there who don't want to marathon all of the other Marvel movies that have been made up to this point. So this is me going through the characters that are going to be appearing in this and basically bringing you up to speed on the last time we saw them. I'm not doing a complete history of all these characters and other actions in the MCU, but I am going to talk about where we last left off with them. So you can use this to get yourself and just basically be a reminder like, oh yeah, that's where that character was, so that you don't have to comb through all the other movies up to this point. So let's get this rolling, and we're gonna start, because I've got several sections worth of this, we're gonna start with the characters who we know for certain are going to be appearing in Avengers Infinity War. So let's start with Captain America. Steve Rogers, who actually I should probably refer to as that because he is no longer carrying the rank or mantle of Captain America. He left that behind along with his original vibranium shield at the end of Civil War. He has broken off from the Avengers. He has not had direct contact with any of them since Civil War that we are aware of. And he also knows about Wakanda because he left Bucky there in the extra credit scene at the end of Civil War. So Cap has basically gone underground since the events of his own last film. Next up, the other side of the Civil War conflict, Tony Stark, Iron Man. So at the end of Civil War and the events of that, he has basically been left as the de facto leader of the Avengers, at least as best as we understand it, because there hasn't been a proper Avengers film since the events of that, but he does seem to be trying to get things back to a semblance of whatever passes for normal with the Avengers. We saw a little bit of that in Spider-Man Homecoming with him kind of grooming Peter for membership as an actual Avenger. So Tony has not lost interest in the Avengers and what the Avengers are meant to be. Next up, Thor, last seen in Thor Ragnarok. Now, where we left off with him, his homeworld of Asgard has been destroyed. He and most of the population of Asgard, all the Asgardians, including his adopted brother Loki, were on a ship basically headed out to, we weren't entirely sure where, but to try and make a new home for themselves. Also, a quick reminder for him, he doesn't have the hammer anymore. That got destroyed. He's got lightning powers now that he kind of always had and was really just channeling through the hammer, but he can now do them without the hammer. He's also missing an eye, and he is now officially the ruler and leader of Asgard, or at least its citizens, since Asgard, the place, is no longer around. Since we touched on him, let's also touch on Loki real quick. Loki, I don't want to say it looks like he turned a leaf because it's Loki, who knows, but what we can pretty much be certain of, and at this point I'll point out that I am basing this strictly off their previous appearances. This is not a dissection of what we've already seen in the trailers, so don't look for me to be including too much of that information here. But Loki pretty much definitely picked up the Tesseract from the Asgard vault on his way out, and Thor does not know that. Now, the Tesseract, remember, is one of the Infinity Stones. I believe it is the Space Stone, so this is immediately going to put them on Thanos' radar, which is not good. Also lumped up with that whole group, we have Hulk. Now, Hulk, when we last saw him here, we did last see him in Hulk form, and when last it was brought up, Banner said that if he became Hulk again, he may not be able to turn back. So he's now Hulk again, and having become Hulk, he did so knowing he may not ever be able to regain control of his own body again. And this was, of course, following his voluntary leaving of the planet Earth because it just wasn't working for him. And he was a gladiator on the planet Sakaar for a while. That all happened during Thor Ragnarok, and he's now basically, last we saw him, was all hooked up with Thor and the other Asgardians. Black Widow was last seen in Captain America Civil War, kind of playing both sides. Initially, she sided with Tony. However, when push came to shove and the chips were down, ultimately, she sided with Cap. And she has kind of gone silent since then, so far as we know. Most likely, she is underground and hiding, just trying to escape the consequences of what she did and having helped out Cap at the very end there. Hawkeye, also not seen since the event of Captain America Civil War. He sided with Cap right off the bat, and you can pretty much bet that he is also in some form of hiding. Scarlet Witch, last seen in Captain America Civil War, she sided with Team Cap. Now, at the time we last saw her, she was beginning to build a relationship with the Vision. So exactly where that is now, considering they were on opposing sides of the conflict in that, we don't know. It is unlikely that she went into hiding at the end of Civil War. She is probably still with the Avengers. She doesn't really have anywhere else to go. And of course, I already mentioned him, Vision, last seen in Captain America Civil War, and in that, he sided with Tony. So he is undoubtedly still at the Avengers complex and working with that group at this point. There is the Falcon, also last seen in Captain America Civil War. Not entirely clear what his standing would be. It's not quite as an obvious thing that he would now be in hiding the way spies like Hawkeye and Black Widow would be. So his exact status in the wake of having been on, I don't want to say the losing side, but the side that is not in command of Avengers, you know, their facility and their tactics and their missions and everything, exactly where he is right now, it is hard to say. War Machine, Rhodey. So he is in physical therapy, trying to get the use of his legs back following basically being the guy who took the nastiest spill in the big airport fight in Captain America Civil War. I have little doubt that Tony is probably helping him with tech to get him on his feet again. We know it's possible the technology exists to get him going again. Exactly where he'll be in terms of recovery when the new film starts up, hard to say, but he sided with Tony. He's still there. Tony feels very responsible for what happened to him, and they're still together. They're still buds. All right, let's get off this planet. Let's talk about some of the cosmic folks. Let's run down the Guardians of the Galaxy real quick. We got Star-Lord, who had a couple of little twists happen in terms of what he learned about himself. He's basically half celestial. He's practically half God. What that will actually mean in practical terms, probably not a lot, because by the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the source that he was drawing power from was gone. We've got Rocket Raccoon, also last seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, who seems to be maybe, possibly, finally getting to a place where he's gonna start being a little bit more trusting and a little bit less of a jerk to his teammates, but you know, he's temperamental. We'll see. We've got Gamora. Now, Gamora, also last seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, she is in the distinct place of being one of the few characters with direct links and connections to Thanos, our big villain. We'll get to him eventually. So, Gamora was his adopted daughter. Her, along with one other character, who again, we'll touch on in a little bit. Now, she has very little desire to get involved with Thanos. She would very much prefer to not ever see him ever again. Someone who would like to see him again, though, is Drax the Destroyer, also last seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He had previously sworn revenge against Ronan the Accuser, the villain of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, who was killed at the end of that film. Following that, Drax then swore to take down Thanos, although judging by his actions and his general demeanor in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, he's not as committed and isn't quite going at it with the same level of angst and gusto that he did when he went after Ronan. So, while I have no doubt it's still a goal for him, it's not quite the obsession that it was when he was going after Ronan. Groot, last seen as, well, primarily seen as Baby Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, post-credit scene, or mid-credit scene in that, we saw him basically as teenage Groot. So odds are he'll be somewhere between that and full-grown by the time we see him in Avengers 4. Now, in terms of his abilities, he can probably pretty much do most of the stuff that we saw adult Groot do. Actually, even little Groot could do a lot of that stuff, so he's probably not particularly limited. He's probably as strong and as versatile and as deadly as we saw him in the original Guardians of the Galaxy at this point. Mantis, new addition to the Guardians of the Galaxy, first and last and only seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. She is an empath, and that gives her the ability to sort of hook into people's feelings. Doesn't have a lot of combat skills, seems to be still finding her place within the Guardians group. Where she could possibly land in terms of a conflict of this scope, not a clue, but we'll see. Nebula, the character I personally am most interested in seeing what's going on. This is the other adopted daughter of Thanos, and unlike Gamora, who would just as soon walk away from all that, Nebula, ooh, so much rage, so much fury in this woman. She wants to take Thanos apart one molecule at a time. She is fueled by so much hate and so much pain, and she was last seen basically going off to try and find him to kill him. She really wants to kill him. We're gonna jump around franchises a little bit more. We have Dr. Stephen Strange, last seen in Thor Ragnarok, where he assisted Thor in locating Odin. So at this point, he seems to have settled into his role. He's not the Sorcerer Supreme yet, at least so far as I could tell, but he is settling into his role, and his use in this world is kind of being a go-to guy where magic could either help or is already involved in the situation that's going on. He has been in direct possession of one of the Infinity Stones. That was the Time Gem. That was in the Eye of Agamotto. Whether or not he will still be in physical possession of that when this film starts, not entirely clear, but he's had it once before. He knows where it is. He knows how to get it. So one would assume he's the link into that. Also from that same franchise, we have Wong, who is another sorcerer. He's friends with Dr. Stephen Strange. Last seen in Doctor Strange, he is a member of the Sorcerer Order, and he's a good guy. Not really too much more to say. Some more supporting characters. Valkyrie, newcomer since Thor Ragnarok. She was a fallen warrior from Asgard, from a group of warrior women who tried to take down the villain Hela way back when. It did not go well. She was the only one who survived. She became kind of a bitter, hard-drinking bounty hunter type, and she has not been able to completely get rid of her sense of duty or sense of right and wrong. So she was last seen with Thor and Loki and all the Asgardians. How about we talk Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, last seen in Captain America Civil War. He sided with Cap. He was captured. We do believe that he was released. Whether or not he was granted his the shrinking technology, the Ant-Man suit, back following his release, we actually don't really know that one way or the other right now. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, last seen in Spider-Man Homecoming, where he turned down Tony's Iron Spider armor and a spot in the Avengers. Somewhat unknowingly. He thought that Tony was just giving him a test and he was supposed to turn it down, except it was a real offer and Peter just kind of turned it down. But that's where we last saw him. He seems to have a pretty good handle on his powers at this point, and he's still in high school. He's still working on balancing everything out, but he seems to be in a decent place as far as Peter Parker tends to be, which, he doesn't usually stay in a good place for long, if you know much about him. Everybody's favorite royal, T'Challa, the Black Panther, last seen in, of course, Black Panther. Now, where things left off with him having had to contend and fight to keep his throne, he has now done something that has never happened with the secretive and very powerful and very technologically advanced nation of Wakanda, which is he is bringing the knowledge that they have to the world. Up to this point, Wakanda has been secretive, cut off, hiding itself from the rest of the world so as not to be exploited, to be able to protect its people as well as possible. And T'Challa has taken the step of bringing what they have to offer to the global table. So that was where we last saw him, literally addressing the United Nations, saying, we are bringing to you our technology and our abilities. Speaking of Wakanda, we've got Okoye, the lead general and greatest warrior of the Wakandan security forces. She will be around. She was last seen in Black Panther. She is loyal to the king. She is a heck of a fighter. She'll be around. Also, Shuri. This is T'Challa's little sister, scientific genius, head researcher and developer of weapons and medical tech and really pretty much everything that's really cool in Wakanda. And since we're talking Bucky Barnes, we got one more resident to talk about who we know is appearing, and that is Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Last seen in the post-credit sequence of the Black Panther film, where we saw him sans any kind of artificial arm at all. Actually, it's this one, isn't it? Or is it this one? Whichever arm it is, he didn't have an artificial arm at all. He seemed really chill, really zen. Seems to have bonded a little bit with Shuri, and he does appear to be actually in a pretty good place, which is slightly surprising because prior to this, the last time we'd seen him was at the very end of Captain America Civil War, being put on ice and basically being like, we need to figure out how to unprogram me because I'm a danger to everybody. So the presumption might be that he is either now deprogrammed or this is somehow the process of deprogramming him. Also confirmed to be appearing. Let me burn through some of these. God, there's a lot of characters. We've got Heimdall, the Asgardian. He is with all the other Asgardians, with Thor and Loki and Valkyrie on that ship. We've got Dr. Eric Selvig, who is an Earthling and a professor and a friend of Thor. We haven't seen him since Avengers Age of Ultron, where he was assisting Thor in getting a vision, which was a scene that largely was just cut from the film for time. We have Hope Van Dyne, the Wasp, last seen in the original Ant-Man, getting her suit. Whether or not we will see her in the suit in Infinity War, hard to say, kind of unlikely. While I'm not going to bring up the trailer footage we've seen for Infinity War, it does seem like the trailer footage we've seen for Ant-Man and the Wasp that she's only just starting to go out and make use of the suit. So she is supposed to appear. Whether or not she will appear as the Wasp, that is not a guarantee. M'Baku, known in the comic books as the Man-Ape, the leader of a specific tribe of Wakanda, initially antagonistic to T'Challa, later an ally of his. He is confirmed to be reappearing, and it's not entirely clear how smooth the relationship between him and T'Challa will be at this point, but they seem to end things on pretty decent terms when last we saw them. There is the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro. We have not seen him since Guardians of the Galaxy 1, after his collection was smashed up rather severely. Now, we last saw him in possession of the Ether, which is one of the Infinity Stones. It has not been seen being held by anybody else. So even though the whole thing got smashed up, presumably he is still in possession of that particular one of the Infinity Stones. Let's talk the baddies we know are going to be in here. The big one, Thanos. Last time we saw him actually appear, it was the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and he was employing Ronan to attempt to get him to acquire one of the Infinity Stones. It was the Power Stone in that particular case. We now know, of course, that he is going about trying to get all these himself. He's not employing folks like Ronan to do it for him anymore. That was the last time we saw him directly. He's been referenced since then. There were a number of references to him in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but more about his past rather than his current movement. So presumably he's just kind of been working on figuring out where the stones are between the last time we saw him in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and now. Now, Thanos has 4 minions he's going to be bringing with him. All of these are characters who have not been seen before, so I really don't have anything to tell you about them. I'll just run down their names real quick. We have Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, Ebony Maw, and Black Dwarf. Whew. That's all the characters who have been confirmed somewhere or other to be appearing in Avengers Infinity War. However, we're not done because they shot Infinity War and Avengers 4 pretty much back to back. So we have a list of characters who have been confirmed to appear in Avengers 4. So let's go through those because some of them were ones I didn't already cover. First up, Captain Marvel. She has yet to debut. She will be debuting in her own film being played by Brie Larson. That comes out between Infinity War and Avengers 4. We do know that that film is a period piece set in the 90s, but exactly where she's going to end up at the end of that, I can't predict. we're going to be getting back Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan, both last seen in the tail end of Spider-Man Homecoming. Pepper Potts being Tony Stark's love interest. They did reconcile. They are back together again. Presumably, Tony has now proposed. Happy Hogan being Tony's former bodyguard, now chauffeur, just kind of good friend employee guy, and he actually kind of kept an eye on Peter Parker for a while. He probably is not being called on to do that as much these days, but he could be, we don't know. We've got Nick Fury and Maria Hill, both last seen in Avengers Age of Ultron, where they came up pulling up the helicarrier to help evacuate Sokovia. Neither of them we have seen since then. Presumably Nick Fury still needs to kind of keep below the radar, keeping out of the watch of various organizations, both probably within the US government and other forces as well, who just want him dead. As for Maria Hill, not really sure what she's been up to. She may or may not have appeared on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. since then. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not going to look that up. The last time we saw her in a movie was Age of Ultron, just kind of helping everybody out. Here's a weird one for you. Harley Keener is returning. Name you probably don't recognize. This was the kid in Iron Man 3 who helped out Tony when he kind of crashed and needed to work on getting his suit up and running again. That character's coming back. I'm not sure what else there is to say. Last we saw him, he was just a small kid who was helping out Tony as best as a small kid could. Yeah. So those are all the confirmed characters, or at least the ones that I could find being confirmed. I'm sure some people will tell me that some of the ones I'm about to talk about were also confirmed, or maybe some of the ones that I said were confirmed are actually rumored. Let me just get through the rest of these. Now it's time for the characters who it is possible, or there has been rumor that they will appear. Nothing is confirmed. First up, Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, the man who made Scott Lang's suit. No confirmation that he will appear. It is possible if both Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne are appearing. Hank Pym would make sense because he's certainly very much tied to them, especially if Hope is going out in the Wasp suit, for the first time or early into her career for that, but not confirmed that he will be appearing. We have not seen him since the events of Ant-Man. Queen Ramonda, this is T'Challa's mother, last seen in Black Panther, alive and well. She holds no official power as her son is now king, but she is well respected and beloved and may or may not be appearing in these films. Refugees from the planet Sakaar, Korg and Meek. These are two gladiators that Thor met in the course of Thor Ragnarok. They were last seen traveling with the Asgardians. One would presume that they would show up then if this film does tackle what happens to the Asgardians, and one would think that it would because we got to cover Thor, but we don't know for certain that they will appear. We'll see. Nova Prime, played by Glenn Close, last seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Now, we don't have a confirmation that she's going to come back. It would make a lot of sense, though, because she was the last known person to be in possession of the Power Gem, as the Nova Corps took possession of that to guard it. Directly linked to that would be Roman Day, which is a member of the Nova Corps, played by John C. Reilly. Also last seen in Guardians of the Galaxy, we have Sharon Carter, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Last seen in Civil War, assisting Captain America. We do not know if she had to answer consequences for that or what they might have been. And it is possible that she may not be appearing in this film at all. This is a one that I've seen. This is more of a theory than a rumor, but I'm just going to touch on it real quick. I've seen some people speculate that Hela, played by Cate Blanchett, the villain of Thor Ragnarok, would be appearing in one or both of the Avengers films that are coming up. I think the theory behind this is because she is the goddess of death and Thanos is traditionally in love with death, that she's basically sort of subbing in, because in the comics, Thanos is actually in love with the physical embodiment of death. And that's not what Hela is. She's just a goddess of death. But the theory seems to be that Hela is substituting in for that physical embodiment of death that Thanos is more traditionally in love with in the comic books. And the argument seems to largely be based around the fact that we saw her in Thor Ragnarok be on Asgard when Ragnarok happened, but we didn't see her die specifically. So It's possible she could come back. I don't think this one's true, but I'll throw it out there. It's possible. Another odd one that might have accidentally been slipped by one of the actors. The Ancient One might appear in some capacity. This is a character played by Tilda Swinton. Mark Ruffalo had mentioned having worked with her recently in an interview, and that may have been an accidental slip that she is making some kind of appearance in these films. Or maybe he was talking about something else completely. I don't know. Finally, Lady Sif, the one sort of big supporter of Thor on Asgard, aside from Heimdall, who did not die. She, in fact, did not appear at all in Thor Ragnarok. So whether or not it is possible for the character to be brought back, whether or not Marvel's just going to let the character quietly drop off and not be dealt with or talked about again, like what happened with Jane Foster or Betty Ross and, you know, other side characters that over time have just kind of stopped appearing and fallen away. Who knows? But it is possible for her to come back. We last saw her, well, in the films in Thor: The Dark World. She made an appearance on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think in the second season, but we haven't seen her in a while. And now for a few characters who are out there, are part of the MCU, but we really don't know what's going on with them, and I would classify these as unlikely to appear. These would include characters like Jane Foster, who has now broken up with Thor and effectively has no reason to appear. She didn't appear in Thor Ragnarok. She basically just got to mention that they're not together anymore, and that's it. I expect Natalie Portman's just done with this part. Peggy Carter, she passed away in Captain America Civil War, so probably not getting that back. Kraglin of the Ravagers, last seen with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm not sure that we should expect to see him with that group in this film. I would be very surprised. I mentioned her earlier, Betty Ross, love interest for the Incredible Hulk, last seen in the Incredible Hulk, the one with Ed Norton, the one that they kind of pretend doesn't exist anymore for the most part. I don't expect her to show up again because they seem to have completely swapped in Black Widow as the potential love interest for Bruce Banner. Also related to that, General Thunderbolt Ross, last seen in Captain America Civil War, a character that they surprisingly did bring back from the Incredible Hulk movie. I would not be expecting to see him. He was last seen pushing for the Sokovia Accords, but when things came down to getting dirty, he wasn't involved in any of the fallout from that. There's also the Abomination, which it was confirmed in the course of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is still locked up and is being kept under wraps. Unlikely that we'll see him. Ditto Baron Zemo, last seen in Captain America Civil War. Also now locked up. There would be no reason for him to be let out, or if he did break out, for him to be participating in this particular thing. The man's got no powers. Baron Mordo, villain to Doctor Strange. He is presumably out starting to hunt down sorcerers. He's on his own agenda, completely separate from any of this. Don't expect to see him. Agent Everett Ross, played by Martin Freeman, last seen in Black Panther, having gotten rather miraculously healed up following taking a bullet. And I would be surprised if we saw him, since most of his ties at this point seem to be with Black Panther, but unless he just coincidentally happens to be in Wakanda when stuff starts to go down, there wouldn't be a reason for him to be appearing. And finally, sadly, I don't think we're going to get an appearance of Howard the Duck. I know! It's such a disappointment, it's such a waste, but I don't think it's happening, guys. Last time we saw him was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, propositioning a robot hooker. Oh, Howard. And we've got one more scant little outlier. That is a confirmed actor without a confirmed part. We know Peter Dinklage is in the movie. We don't know who he's playing. And I'm not even going to bother guessing. There are so many characters that they could have him come in and appear as and have him be, or he could just be somebody really minor. They have brought in really big actors to play relatively minor parts. So that does it, folks. That's your prep video for all these friggin' characters. Story is super straight, simple. Thanos wants the Infinity Stones. If he gets all of them, he can assemble the Infinity Gauntlet, which basically allows him to do anything. And his main goal is, in his words, to balance the universe, which seems to involve killing about half the population of it. So there's your basic premise in terms of what the threat is. Those are all your characters that you can expect to see or not see or maybe see. Who knows? You're now all set, right? Crystal clear, clear as mud. Have fun with the movie. So there's all that stuff to do. You know, like, subscribe, support me on Patreon if you like what I do. Links for all that stuff is down in the description. Hope you found this helpful. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Whew.